Salvete, discipulae. Homo portat felem. Felis portatur ab homine. Avis portat hominem. Num avis hominem portat? Non portat. Homo portat avem. Aut avis portatur ab homine. Well, I hope I got those sentences right. I was in terror of having my ear bitten by the parrot or my face scratched by the cat. So if you notice a mistake, then I'll be happy to give you credit. But anyway, I'm going to explain the sentences. The reason why I used the props and spoke the sentences that I spoke is because they, some of them are in the passive voice, and the test that we're going to have on Friday is all about the passive voice. Okay, so the first sentence that I gave you was homo portat felem. So homo hominis, masculine, means man or person, and felis, feminine, means cat, and porto, portare, portavi, portatum means carry. That word you know. I think you should know homo hominis, but perhaps you don't remember it. So at any rate, homo is the subject. That means man. Portat means carries, and felis, feminine, means cat. Aha, I hear some of you saying, felis, that's third declension feminine, and it does not increase in the genitive. Isn't that an I stem, Mr. Cantor? And if you are thinking that, you're right, it is an I stem. So it would be felium in the genitive plural, but that doesn't matter for the purposes of our test, or at least it probably doesn't matter. So what does that mean? Homo portat felem, or you could say homo felem portat. That means the man carries the cat. Now, the second sentence that I gave you was felis portatur ab homine. Felis portatur ab homine. So that means the cat is carried by the man, or is being carried by the man. And that is taking the same sentence and turning it around and putting something that was originally in the active voice in the passive voice. So you notice it's portat in the active and portatur in the passive. And you notice that what the passive voice is doing is taking the direct object and making it the recipient of the action, treating it as the subject and making it the recipient of the action. And then the former subject, the man who's doing the carrying, can be used in a prepositional phrase using a or ab. So we say ab because the H is silent. So felis portatur ab homine. And the third sentence that I said was avis portat hominem. That's when I had the parrot on my shoulder. Avis, feminine, bird. Ah, Mr. Cantor, that's another one of those I stem third declensions because it doesn't increase in the genitive. You're right, it's another one of those. So that means the bird carries the man, which obviously isn't true. It's the other way around. And so I said num. You may remember that word from Lingua Latina and from some of the later lessons in Jenny's. Num avis portat, or num avis hominem portat. Does surely the man, or the bird isn't carrying the man, which is correct. And then I said non portat. He is not carrying, or she is not carrying. And then I said avis portatur ab homine, which is correct. The bird is carried, or is being carried by the man. Okay, so that's just to get you started on remembering what the passive voice is. It takes the subject and makes the subject the recipient of the action. So it sort of flips around the normal construction of a sentence in which the subject is doing the action to the direct object. Here the subject is receiving the action. All right, so let's take a look at what's going to be on the test on Friday. The first thing that's going to be on the test is a paradigm. I'm just going to ask you for one paradigm. but I'm going to give you a verb, perhaps a verb that you're not familiar with, and you're going to have to figure out how to plug it into the paradigm and join the right kind of ending to the right kind of verb. Only first conjugation verbs, okay? No second conjugation verbs. So all of that is going to be on pages 104 and 105 when you're reviewing. So remember that there are 6 tenses in the passive, just like there are in the active. So it could be a present tense, it could be an imperfect tense, it could be a future tense, or it could be perfect or pluperfect or future perfect. And all of those paradigms are right here in order. They start with the present, then they go to the imperfect, and then they go to the future. Okay, so just to review, remember that the basic endings are ris, tur, mur, mini, and tur. That's for the first 3 tenses that you have to remember that. So instead of porto, portas, portat, as it would be in the active present tense, it's portor, and then portaris, portatur, portamur, portamini, portantur. Basically, all you're doing in the imperfect is adding the BA before those endings. There's an M instead of an O for the first one, but it's, sorry, not an M, but an R instead of an O for the first one. So it's portabar, portabaris, portabatur, etc. And that means I used to be carried for porto, or for voco, it would be I used to be called. For amo, I used to be loved. That would be fine. Or you could say I was being. That would be another alternative. But just use used to, since you're used to using that for translating the imperfect. And then for the future, it's mostly bi, just like it is. You can take a look at the paradigm and you'll see. So it's portabor rather than portor or portabar, portabor. And then one tricky one, instead of portabaris, it's portabaris. You use an E instead of an A there. And then portabatur, portabamur, portabamini, portabantur. And it's the same for any other verb. You just have to remember the pattern of where you chop it off. You chop it off before the O. So if we were using paro, prepare, par would be your stem, right? So instead of portor, it would be paror. And instead of portabar, it would be parabar. And instead of portabor, it would be parabor, etc. Right? So just put that A in, except for that one E in the future, and then put your BA or BI or what have you, and then put your endings ris, tur, mur, mini, intur, right? For the future, of course, it's not, that isn't I will carry, that is I will be carried, because this is how it works for the passive. Okay, now, you get the other 3 tenses. You got 3 more tenses, the perfect tenses, perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. And as you see, those work very differently. Those are all on page 105. The thing that they have in common is they all use the 4th principal part, not the 3rd. So amo, amare, amavi, amatum, they're going to use that amatum, plus they're going to use a form of sum esse, that verb that you may remember, I hope you remember, which means to be. So those 4th principal parts, remember they're going to be 4th principal part plus some form of sum, 2 words for each word, right? So when you're using the 4th principal part, remember that's an adjective, so each time it's going to have 3 different gender forms. So in the singular, masculine is going to be portatus, feminine is going to be portata, and neuter is going to be portatum. Right? So this is how you're going to write it. Portatus aum, this is the perfect tense, so you're going to use the present tense of sum. Sum, portatus aum es, portatus aum est. And then you're going to have to change the 4th principal part for the plural. The masculine is plural is going to be portati, the feminine is going to be portate, and the neuter is going to be portata. All right? So you're going to write portati a sumus, portati a estis, portati a sunt. What do those things mean if you put them together? They mean I have been carried, not I have carried, but I have been carried, because they're passive, right? Or I have been loved, or I have been called. So you're just going to use the 4th principal part. So for do, dari, dedi, datum, you'd be using datus aum and dati ea in the plural, right? You're just adapting. You're just chopping off dat or por P-O-R-T-A-T, or whatever the fourth principal part is, and then sticking the endings on there. So you're using sum est, sumus estis, sunt, as you see if you look at your book, for the perfect. When you're going on and doing the pluperfect, then you're using the imperfect form of sum. Eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratus, erant. All right. So if you want to say I had been carried, you singular had been carried. You remember pluperfect has had and not have and has. Then you would say portatus aum eram, portatus aum eras, portatus aum erat. And then when the plural, remember, you've got to change that fourth principal part to plural forms with the three different genders. So portati ea, eramus, portati ea, eratis, portati ea, erant. And the future perfect works in a very similar way. So same thing. The fourth principal part works in exactly the same way, but instead of using sum, the present tense of sum, or eram, the imperfect tense of sum, you're going to use ero, which is the future tense of sum. So you're going to say portatus aum ero, portatus aum eris, portatus aum erit, and then in the plural you're going to switch those endings to make them plural endings again. Portati ea, erimus, portati ea, eritis, and portati ea, erunt. Remember, this is an open book test. So the verb may be different, but you can adapt the endings. You're not going to have to remember all of this stuff. All you're going to have to know is what I'm asking you. And by the way, I didn't mention it, the future perfect is I will have, not I will have carried, but I will have been carried because it's passive. So it's happening to you, you're not doing it. Okay, so that's question number one. You're going to have to take a verb that I give you, and you're going to have to make a paradigm, singular, plural, first, second, third person, and then you're going to have to put all of the Latin forms and translate it into English. So it shouldn't be too hard as long as you have some basic idea of what's being asked for and how to use your book. All you're doing is adapting it. You don't have to have it in your head. Open book, open notes, not open computer, no open ears. So you can't talk to people on or off the computer, and you can't consult the computer sources. Okay? All right, so question number 2 is I'm going to be giving you a form in Latin, several forms. This is kind of like exercises A and B. I'm going to be giving you some Latin forms, and I'll be giving you some English forms, and you're going to have to translate them. So, for example, if I gave you vocatus sum, then you would have to recognize, oh, that's voco, and that is the perfect form of voco, and it's passive. All of these forms are going to be passive, so don't give me any active forms. And you're going to say, aha, that means I have been called, right? If I said vocatus est, then that would be he has been called, right? If I were to say vocatur, that would mean he is called, or she is called, or it is called, or is being called, if you like. So that's all you have to do. And then flip it around and do it the other way. I'll give you some English ones. So if I say, I am called, you would say vocor. If I said, I will be called, you would say vocabor. If I said, I will have been called, then you would say vocatus, or you were girls, so you would say vocata. You would say vocata ero. That means I will have been called. I would say vocatus era. So you just change the gender for yourselves. You're going to be feminine. And that's pretty much all there is to it for question number 2. For question number 3 is I'm going to be giving you a sentence in Latin, and I'm going to be asking you to find things. And then I'm going to give you a sentence in English, which is just prepping you for translating from English to Latin. And you're going to have to find things. So verbs, direct objects, and subjects, and things like that. Possibly prepositional phrases or indirect objects. But basically, if you know how to find verbs, direct objects, and subjects, you should do pretty well. So if I give you a sentence, let's look at the sentence, the first sentence from exercise Not the first one, because that's going to be homework, and I don't want to mess with that. But let's look at page 107 and look at example number 10. Castra magna cum audacia oppugnata sunt. Okay, so if I asked you, what was the verb? Here's where you have to watch out. You might say sunt, but remember, those perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect forms, they all have two pieces, right? So the verb is not sunt, the verb is oppugnata sunt, okay? And that's all you would have to answer. Oppugnata sunt, you found the verb. Now, in this particular sentence, some sentences will only have pronoun subjects, which are stuck in the ending of the verb. But if I ask you what the subject of this, then hopefully you would look at it and you would say, castra is the subject, okay? And let's look at number 9. So fabulae de legato audaci semper narrabuntur. The verb there is narrabuntur, right? And fabulae is the subject. So there are no direct objects in these sentences because these sentences are all in the passive form. But if I were to give you a sentence in English and I said, the man gave the queen a table. All right. So, and then I ask you, what's the verb? You would say gave. If I asked you, what's the subject? You would say the man. If I asked you, what's the direct object? You would say the table. Right. He's giving the table to the queen and not the queen to the table. So that's the direct object. So these are pretty basic kinds of exercises as well. All of this is an open book. So you can look up vocabulary if you need to in the back and consult anything you want in the book or in your notes. All right, so exercise or question number 4. What I'm doing is I am giving you a sentence and then I'm giving you a translation of the sentence and I'm asking you how to modify the translation. So suppose I said vocor reginam. That means, sorry, let me try that again. Suppose I said vocor a regina. So that would mean I am called by the queen. And if I asked you to modify that to mean I will be called by the queen, then you would say vocabor a regina in the ablative, because a takes the ablative. So you're just fiddling with things, you're changing things around a little bit. Perhaps I would, if I said, if I gave you a sentence that said, say for example, Regina amat regem, the queen loves the king. So, and I said, how would you change that to mean the king is loved by the queen? Then you would say rex, and then is loved would not be amat, it would be amatur, he is loved, and then by the queen, regina. So I hope I got all those right. If you find something wrong, let me know, and I'll give you extra credit for it. And then, so that's basically what I'm doing. I'm giving you a couple of sentences and having you play with them and change the translation. So you're going to have to figure out, am I asking you to change the tense? Am I asking you to change the voice? Something like that. And again, you can use your book for all of this. All right, then the last one, I am giving you a sentence in Latin, and I'm giving you multiple choice. I'm giving you different possible translations, and you have to tell me which one it means. So for example, number 2 from page 107, if I gave you the sentence multa et pulchra dona reginae potenti dantur, and if I said, say A, the first choice was many beautiful gifts are given or are being given to the powerful queens, that wouldn't be right because it's not plural. The queens are not plural, they're singular. If I said many and beautiful gifts will be given. That would not be right. The will be given part would be wrong because it's dantur, not dabuntur, right? So it's not future, it's present tense. So that's what I'm going to be doing. You're going to have to be finding out which of the sentences I give you as multiple choice are the correct, is the correct one. So you have to check tense, you have to check number, you have to check all those different things. One of them will be right, 3 of them will be wrong. So that's what you need to do for the test. Hopefully, we will be able to get the Google Hangouts to work tomorrow morning if you want to come do some review. If you missed that and you want to ask me some questions, go ahead and give me a call or send me the questions on the Jupyter Grades or an email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Love you all and hope to see as many of you as will fit into the Google Hangouts tomorrow.